The ESME Philippines is a free learning platform offered to Filipinos who are looking for a way to learn and build real employable skills that are in demand. Learn marketing, entrepreneurship, photography, culinary, advertising, videography, business operations, gardening, personal development, health and fitness, finance and accounting, music, and academics. Learn and share your skills today. Sign up now at esme.ph.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jessica and I'm the CEO of ESME.ph. So welcome to the live webinar series of ESME, an e-learning marketplace for Filipinos where you can build relevant and in-demand skills. So you can like our Facebook page at ESME Philippines, and please do visit our website at www.esme.ph. Now, for those who are watching on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, feel free to share this video to people who you think will be interested about our topic. So today, we have a special guest co-host. His name is Christoph Contreras. He's a human resource training officer who specializes in communication, technical, and leadership training. Also, an instructional designer for classroom training and e-learning modules. He's also a professional host and voiceover artist, and he hosted social and corporate events like SM 3-Day Sale and Christmas events. He's also a member of Microphone Club. So without further ado, welcome, Christoph Contreras.
Hi, Jessica. Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. And to all those who are watching us right now, I'm quite excited to be part of this. And first of all, I would like to thank you guys for inviting me to be a part of this program. Thank you, Jessica.
You're welcome. And we are very grateful to help us to host this special segment today. Would you like to introduce the topic and our special guest?
Sure, no worries. When we talked about this, I'm quite excited learning about the topic today. I know our viewers would learn a lot from our guest speaker, and a lot of people have been thinking right now because of I think with the current situation we are in, a lot of thinking, what else could I do since I lost my job, or probably I'm working at home. I want to earn more, right? So a lot of people have been thinking about that. So I think our guest, and not I think, but I'm sure our guest speaker could enlighten our viewers today. So without further ado, allow me to introduce our guest host today. He is the president and co-founder of Startup Village, a one-stop incubator or accelerator services company that enables startups to bring their unique ideas and business concept to reality. Right. Grabe, no? So if you really want to start up, no? So he has 15 years of work experience in the areas of business development, social development, project management, client relations, training, teaching, and marketing. And he's been in the startup scene in the Philippines for quite some time, helping and mentoring startups. So ladies and gentlemen, it is really my pleasure and honor to introduce. He's awarded as one of the most, or 100 most influential global marketing leaders. So help me welcome our guest speaker today, Mr. Carlo Calimon.
Hello, everyone.
Hi,
Good afternoon. Pleasure to be here. Nice to meet you, Chris. And hi, Jessica.
Yeah,
Thanks
you
for
so
having
much.
me again.
It's been a pleasure. And would you like to greet our audience?
Yeah, I'd like to greet our audience. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. And eager to share my experience and my insights in relation to today's topic.
Okay, perfect. So I guess huwag na natin patagalin pa. Let's start with our questions. So first, I guess we want to know more about what is Startup Village.
Okay, so Startup Village is an startup enabler. Basically, you can think of us as an incubator and accelerator. And what that means is we help support the journeys of the next generation of startups and entrepreneur disruptors. So as we know, the entrepreneurial journey is not easy. So what we do is we provide the foundation through education and mentorship so that the journey becomes easier. I'm not saying it's easier. I'm saying it's easier for our students and the would-be entrepreneurs. At the same time, we also provide a lot of mentorship and guidance. And this comes from our pool of partner mentors who are not just academics, but also practitioners in various industries. So our main objective is to really help the startup because we want more startups to succeed. It is a challenging path, and we feel that this is really something that we want to get into. In fact, this is a manifestation of what we've been doing for the past 15, 20 years already.
Wow. So, yeah, Carlo, that's really interesting. No, this is really intended for those who have an idea. Probably, I want to start a business, or probably I want to be an entrepreneur, but I don't know where to start. I don't know whom to ask. Right?
Yes. So we specially cater to early stage startups, meaning even if early stage meaning like what you mentioned, these guys are the ones who have an inkling or have the desire to become startups or entrepreneurs. Some of them may have ideas, some of them don't. For some, they may have started something already but haven't really kicked it off. So that's where we come in.
That's right. And I think I would like to share as well, like we're proud to say that ESME is part of a Startup Village. And so far, Carlo has been a great mentor to us. And I'm sure a lot of companies would need incubator or a Startup Village help. So I guess I think we have to define. A lot of people don't know the difference between incubator and accelerator. So maybe you could share and tell us more about the difference about it.
All right, sure. So when you talk about incubator, basically you're still nurturing the startup, right? So like what we know, if you think about it from the real world perspective, what an incubator is, right? You put eggs inside and then use the incubator to fast track the process, put pressure in it so that the egg hatches faster, right?
That's right.
So if you take a look at that analogy, that's what an incubator is. Now, an accelerator, on the other hand, speeds up the growth, right, of the startup in that sense. So on one side, you're just trying to hatch the startup, ginagawa mo ng CCU, right? Then on the other hand, you're accelerating the growth of the chicken to a chicken, right? So if you can relate that analogy, right? So that's the basic difference. So there are programs for the incubator that allows you to incubate and really nurture that startup from while it's still an egg, and then after that we create programs such that the startup grows and accelerates much faster.
I see. Carlo, I would also like to ask, like, is there a certain level of standard to determine if the business is for acceleration na?
Yes, normally the startup or the business is ready for acceleration if the business model is already tested, there is a degree of traction, and there is a degree of revenue already from the organization. So basically what you want to do with acceleration is that, okay, you've proven the concept, people are using it. Now, how do you grow it much faster? How do you expand it much faster?
I see. So you have measures like from hatching. Okay, so now you are ready. We have this certain criteria that we can see. Okay, so it's ready to be in the market now. Something like that.
Actually, for both concepts, there is a degree of market presence, right? Meaning, even when you're still being incubated, you can be out in the market already, but you're not growing as fast yet. Basically, in that phase, you're still trying to test whether or not what you have is acceptable to the target customers that you're after. On the other hand, it's more of a matter of, okay, how do I grow this customer base? Right? Can I grow this customer base based on the learnings that I've had in the early phases?
And if ever I have a business and I want to join Startup Village, what services do you provide for companies, startup companies?
Sure. So one of the things that we do is first we run different programs that's related to incubation. We are planning on launching an accelerator program before the end of the year, except that the pandemic hit us. But we're still trying to see whether our partners can help us co-execute. So we have an incubation program. We have an early stage startup program, meaning if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, we have a 14-week program that takes you through the whole process, gives you the proper foundation, so that when you actually execute and start your business, you have the proper tools, in essence. Now, these tools, regardless of whether you pursue the same idea or not, will be useful for you, right? Regardless of what type of entrepreneurial journey you pursue. So, because that's our specialization, and I think that differentiates us from everybody else. We're primarily educator practitioners. So there's a lot of wisdom actually passed on to the startup when you're executing your idea. So while we value obviously the theories that are found in books and so on, we couple that with actual practice and experience from our pool of resource people.
Wow. So it's not just theoretical that you're teaching, but also application.
Yes.
Right.
And also, aside from that, we also run regular webinars, weekly webinars to help support our community. Prior to the pandemic, we also provide co-working spaces. We have 5 locations all around the metro and even Cavite. We were about to open Cebu, but the pandemic hit us. We also organized immersion trips in centers of innovation. So we've been doing Silicon Valley immersion trips for the past 3 years.
Oh, that's
Basically, it's a week-long program wherein we go to Silicon Valley, we visit the likes of Facebook, Pinterest, Google, and Salesforce, and so on. Not just to take photos of the places or to eat there, but really to meet people, interact, and have
Right.
learning sessions with our partners there. So those are just some of the things that we do. Also, we have weekly pitching activities as well. This happens on a weekly basis wherein we gather our pool of friends who are investors. We have a few VCs, we have a few funds who attend, wherein we feature 2 to 3 startups that are raising funds or looking for partnerships. So, yeah.
Wow, I see. I think that addresses one of the questions here in the comments. So later we will flash it. But since we're talking about that now, we have been talking about startups and hatching. Can we dig deeper on the concept of starting up? So Carlo, what are the basic characteristics of a startup that we think could pave the way to success?
All right. So, there are a few things that I normally look at, right? And this isn't in any particular order. So, a good way for me to measure whether the startup will become successful is first and foremost the passion of the founders. I want to get into the root of why they're doing this, and their what do you call this? Their reasons for actually doing the startup. I want to find out, what
What?
makes them tick, right? And
Yeah.
what their purpose is. Then I will match that with their vision.
Mm-hmm.
Where do they want to take this company? What they call this? So it's basically the why, right? Why are they doing this? Where do they want to take it? And then the next one would be the what, meaning what type of innovation do they have, and is it something that provides value to a specific group of people. Okay. The next thing I would look at also is the founders. I would look at their capabilities, right? And I would like to see whether or not there is a balance of capabilities within the team and if they can work together. Because finding partners is, you know, um, it's another, challenge. It's another challenging thing that we all have to take a look at. And lastly, if they do have, I would also look at whether or not they have mentors as well. Excuse me, because I want to see whether or not they have the proper guidance.
Yeah. And
So
Mm.
those are the 5 things I would normally take a look at.
that's right. So yeah, I think I would like to add, it's very important for entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs to always find their why, because business or entrepreneurship is very difficult. It needs a lot of hard work and resilience, patience, and whenever you get at the end of the day, pag nakaka-experience ka ng hardship, you always have to go back to your why to keep you going.
Yeah,
So
it's a challenging journey. So that's why I always look at the passion and purpose of the what do you call this, the entrepreneur, because that is what will drive them,
Yeah.
and that will ultimately tell us whether they're gonna break early or not.
Right, right. I completely agree with the two of you, no? Kasi when you look at the passion would keep you going no matter how hard it would turn out, 'di ba? Yung most especially pag nagsisimula, nandun yung hirap and I think a lot of or startup companies have failed because nung ginusto lang nila, ay gusto ko lang i-try ito, so trial and error, tapos wala pala yung passion doon, and then it suddenly dies after that, no? So I completely agree with the two of you, yung mga points. So, wow, that was awesome, no? Pagdating sa
So a lot of people would want to be an entrepreneur, but most of the time, kala nila it's better than 9 to 5 job. Like they want to quit the 9 to 5 job, but the reality is entrepreneurship is much more difficult. It would require more of your time, and also with what Carlo said, aside from passion, you also have the skill to execute the business. So if you have the passion and the skill, that would be a perfect, that would be the sweet spot for you to start your own business. But going to the I also have a question. So like I said, a lot of people want to start a business, and a lot of people would say, "Na I have this great idea," but the idea would be useless if you don't execute it, right? So I think most frequently asked question is, if I have a great idea, but I haven't built a minimum viable product, what should I do next? What are your thoughts about this kind of common mindset of founders wannabe?
Okay, so to be upfront, when you're starting out, technically you don't even have to have an MVP first or a minimum viable product first, right? Everything starts off with an idea, right? So what you want to do, even if you're just starting off with an idea, is you talk about it with other people. Why? Because you want to find out and get feedback about that idea first and foremost before you build anything. In fact, I know that you guys are young and you may not have heard about this line before, but there was a line before that says, "Build it and they will come." It came from an old movie back in the 90s, I believe, with Kevin Costner and so on. The title of the movie was Field of Dreams, right? So if you build something, it will come. But from a startup or entrepreneurship perspective, there is no such thing, right? Why? Because just because you build it and you see that you have the great idea doesn't mean people are going to want it or they're going to need it, right? So what you want to do is you want to validate first before you actually start building it. In fact, I've mentored a lot of people who have said, for example, that they're building something that uses a lot of tech, building an app or a platform and so on. And they told me, okay, I'm already building it. And I said, okay, why are you building it already? Are you sure that the customers that you're after are the right group of customers? Have you validated your idea? Are you sure about your value proposition and so on? And when they told me no, I said, then why are you building it in the first place? In fact, I've known of a lot of people who've started off with an MVP that was just made out of paper, right? So paper drawings lang, like parang, oh, this is what it looks like. This is my prototype, right? This is what the screen looks like, and so on. Or some people will use what we call this mock-ups, right? Drawing muna without actually building anything. Now, why is that important? Because when you start, especially for the tech guys, di ba? A lot of them will start building it, right? And then what happens when you realize, okay, based on your validation, which you did after, that's when you realize na, ay, hindi pala fit, wala palang may gusto. So what happens? You just wasted a lot of time and effort on nothing, right? So you want to make sure to look at the value proposition first and the customer first and match them together before you actually start building something. Right. So it's okay if you don't have an MVP. It's okay if you don't have a prototype. But there are other ways to actually validate, to check whether or not you're on the right track.
That's right. So yeah, validation is really important. Para nga, like you said, hindi ma-waste yung effort that you made, and for you to see if there's a need and there's a customer who's willing to pay for your product, diba?
Yeah.
So for me, my strategy as well is like I do pre-orders or I do Kickstarter, something like that. Maybe you could ask your friends, get feedback from the people around you.
I would just like to add though that it's okay to talk to your friends initially, but when you validate your ideas, never rely on family and friends for their feedback. Because they won't tell you the truth.
Nagsishoot ko?
Good idea, yeah.
They'll say, oh, it's a great idea. Oh, yeah, okay yan. But when push to shove, when the product's actually out there, sige na nga, bibili ako isang beses. But it's more important to have a recurring customer. So you want to go after the potential or the profile of the real customers and you talk to them, right? Because at the end of the day, we always teach this, right? We don't start businesses, we solve problems.
Exactly.
Right. So when we solve problems, therefore we create solution, and the solution is what we sell, right? And that is what gives value to a group of customers. Now, when we think about it, not everybody will want your product, right? Even if it addresses a common need, not everybody will want it, right? It's in the same fashion. For example, to simplify that principle. Everybody needs to eat, right?
Yep.
It's a common need, right? I need to eat. You need to eat. Everybody needs to eat. But what you want to eat is a different matter altogether. Let's say Jessica wants a salad, or Chris wants to have a burger. Then I might want pizza. Iba-iba yung gusto natin.
Exactly.
Right? But the needs are the same. So we need to look for that group of people who not only need what we have, but also want what we are offering. Doon nagkakaproblema oftentimes. Why? Because we only take it from the perspective of the need. And another thing also that people should be careful about is that, remember, a lot of these problems that we see originated from us, right? Kunwari, yung irritant mo, kinainisan mo, right? That's where the original idea, I'm so frustrated about this. This is my solution, right? The challenge with that's okay when you're starting out, but the challenge is when you're actually going to market, wherein you always say that, no, I am the profile of my customer. Because I am my own customer. There's a risk in that because you are not necessarily your own customer. You have to really match, right, the solution to the right group of people. It may have originated from you, but it doesn't necessarily have to end with you. Why? Because the better you know the customer and the target segment that you're after, the better the potential performance of your organization.
So, Carlo, what you're saying, I think we're going to that saying that necessity is the mother of invention. So, would you think it's better na instead of asking, kasi ito na experience ko, so there's this need, I find this, I must invent or try to come up with this company. Better kung nakita ko siya from other people, these people are finding this kind of need, and I think I want to target that. Would that be better?
No, I think that what I'm trying to say is that you saw the problem because you experienced
Mhm.
that problem yourself. Then you came
Uh-huh.
up with a solution. But you have to check whether this solution is acceptable to the customers that you're after.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
the solution can eventually evolve, right? And that will eventually evolve. When it
Mm.
evolves, right, it is no longer you or the inventor who is the customer now. It is already that external group, right, that you validated the concept with. Kasi kumbaga parang, you have to think of it that the solution, now you are only a part of that solution now, right? Because
Mhm.
it that solution evolves as well. That's why when you do the mentorship, like for example, when I was helping sila Jessica and the team, right, at ESME, right, they were thinking about it from the perspective initially from their side, right?
Yeah.
But when you shift the perspective to the other side, that's where the real insights come in. But I'm not saying that you're no longer part of that concept or you're not part of the target market in essence, but
Yeah.
the concept should evolve also the more we know the customer, and that becomes more powerful.
Right. Grabe, no? Sobrang empowering no sinabi mo na, yeah, you're part of the solution, but it will be focused there.
So
Right.
yeah, thank you for that, Carlo. That is very insightful. So
Mm.
I would like to ask, like, in building a startup, of course, having co-founders can tremendously help in executing the plans kaysa sa mag-isa ka lang. But how would I find a good co-founders? What are your suggestions?
Okay, that's a tricky question because to be upfront, I've had challenges already on several initiatives wherein I was very unlucky with finding the right partners. Um, Ultimately, I think that it goes back to the why, right? Everybody has to be on the same page as to their why. Okay, so your vision, your purpose has to be aligned first and foremost. Secondly, I think that you should all have the same values, right? It's okay not to agree, right? It's
Mm.
okay to have a mix of capabilities, especially there's a balance, there should be a balance. It's okay that you have different opinions, but if you have the same values, even if there are differences like that, you can still come together. And if you really share the same passion and the same vision, it'll transcend, right? Whatever differences that you will have, right? But also be careful that um, it doesn't mean that just because you're family, just because you've been friends for 10 years or whatnot, it means it's gonna work out. Why? Because the pressures of what happens, right, will change can change people, right?
Right.
Exactly.
And
And
it's not necessarily in a good way. Or
Yes.
at the end of the day, also you have to understand people change, right? So the person that you met like 2 years ago or 5 years ago when you were kids may not necessarily be the same person, you work with them and so on 5 years from now,
that's
That's
right?
true.
right.
So people evolve. So that's why, you know, uh, it can be tricky to find the right partners, but I think that, if you share the why and if you have the same values and you have the same vision, that should be a big thing already. That's why, to be upfront, I'm not a believer in, um, just the mere fact that you met each other during a startup event na parang, oh, we have the same idea. Oh, let's partner. Di ako naniniwala na ganun kadali yun. Or,
Mm-hmm.
oh, we have the same idea. Let's work together. Right? Those things are actually risky. Why? Because sabihin natin yung do come together. Things work out in the beginning. Pero after a while, biglang, oh, ayan na, changes na, ng opinion, may differences na lumalabas. But then again, you're incorporated. Doon na sumasabog, right? Yung mga away, yung mga ganyan, then it becomes nasty. It can become nasty also. So that's why I'm not a believer in those kinds. So dapat, parang ano lang yan eh, panliligaw rin lang yan eh, right? Kailangan kilalanin mo, kilatisin mo, right? Alamin mo talaga na parang, oh, are you really meant for this sort of marriage, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Hindi ganun
Right.
kadali na people think it's easy enough no even in school, right? Parang let's be group mates. Sa school pa lang group mates pa lang. Gagawa lang ng nag-aaway.
Yeah.
Nagkaka-falling out. Paano pa kaya kapag ka-negosyo na, kapag may pera na involved and so on. So it's a different animal altogether.
So more than having the same ideas, I heard from you, it's more of the values that you have, that
Yes.
dapat parehas kayo ng values.
Values
Right?
and vision.
Values
Yeah.
and vision. Right. Very important. Now, nababanggit natin ngayon since we're talking about business and there's money involved in it, and we know some people change because of money. Now I'm finding my co-founder. How should my co-founder and I split up probably the company's equity?
It's always about what you put in, right?
Mhm.
Whether you put in actual money or you put in actual work for equity, tawag doon sweat equity. But at the end of the day, you should be in agreement, right? Kasi ayaw mo yung in the end, nagtuturuan kayo na parang, I'm doing more.
Exactly.
Right? Bakit konti lang yung shares ko? Di ba? Kasi kapag may pumasok ng pera, then the value, di ba? So, doon na nagkakataon. But, rule of thumb normally is that what we do is, for example, when you're starting a company, you incorporate, and let's say 1 million yung incorporation, right? Hati-hati tayo dun sa 1 million. O kung 5 tayo, tigto 200,000 tayo. But if, let's say, it's possible also na parang, sige, one person, wala ako yung 200,000 eh. But I can work for it, right? So if you were gonna pay me a salary to work in this company, how much will that be? Obviously agreed upon by the group and say, sige, kunwari lang I'll pay you 40,000 a month. Kunwari lang, 40,000 a month. So in 5 months, bawi mo na yung you actually paid for your shares already. And after that, that's kumbaga parang that's the time when you actually get a salary, right? Or it's counted as salary. You know what I mean? So it's always what you put in. That's how it is measured. Para fair, right?
Right.
So, sorry. So yeah, going back to finding the co-founder, I would like to add siguro parang I think there's some opinions nga na ibang entrepreneurs never do business with your friends or family if you don't want to ruin the relationship, diba? And also finding out the right co-founder is not only the values and vision, but also kung magmamatch yung personality niyo. Kasi the business is gonna be hard, may mga difficult decisions. So dapat nagmamatch kayo, like kahit mag-disagree kayo, at the end of the day, you'll still be able to work it out. And then question is, well, I would just like to add that I'm very lucky enough to find my co-founders na nagmamatch naman yung personal vision and values namin. But Carlo, for starting out, what is the ideal team size? Like for early stage talaga?
It really depends, right? There's no fast and quick rule as to the size of the founding team. Ang importante, you can complement each other. You can work together, and you guys bring a certain skill on the table as well, right? So, for example, I've started a company with 2 people. I've started a company with 3. Pero siyempre, in paper, there should be at least 5, right? But ultimately, there has to be a complement into, and may assignment of responsibilities. Now, let's say there's a gap between what you need and the skills available, and then that's when you hire, right? Kung hindi nyo pa kaya ma-afford mag-hire, then maghanap kayo ng technical, maghanap kayo ng partner na may capability na ganon, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like what I said, there's no hard and fast rule in terms of size.
Right. So okay. So hindi lang basta kasi sobrang dami namin, no? Para baka mas lalong yung concept. So as long as each person can bring something on the table.
And it's also about how you would structure it.
Mm-hmm.
Pero at the end of the day, for example, if 7 kayong partners, right? You have to understand also, I believe in governance, proper governance. So you have a board meeting and so on. And it's not necessarily the same people sitting in the board. Diba? So there's a difference kasi between an owner versus a manager in that sense. So you have to wear different hats. Right? Because if you're part of the board, you're talking about strategic directions, and the other side is if you're a manager, right? You're basically an employee of the company. So your metrics are different.
Yes, that's right.
Also,
Oh,
we have some few comments here. Would you like to read those, Christoph? And we have
yes,
questions.
sure. So before we transition to the next part of our segment, no, Carlo, meron mga questions dito eh. Number one from here we have, I think nasagot na yung kay Sir Rocky Constiniano, yung about sa contents of these programs kasi nabigyan mo naman ng idea about it. How about from Jessica Carion? She said, is there a hierarchy of needs you could share that applies to business, especially for startups?
Um, um, I don't know exactly what you mean by hierarchy of needs. But basically, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, remember that pyramid, right? Yung pyramid
Yes.
na yun. So if you're a human being, right, everybody will go through that hierarchy, right?
Yes.
But remember, these are all based on needs, right? So at the
Yep.
bottom of the pyramid, you have food, shelter, and clothing. Then after you accomplish that, you go up the pyramid until you reach self-actualization on the top. Now, those are the needs, right? Now, when you talk about the need, right, that's at the core of each product that you create or that you buy. Okay? So the deeper the need, the more relevant that you become. But remember, there's the other side that you have to balance it off with, which is the want of the customer, right? Because we may need the same thing, but we have different wants. So ano ba yung want na kailangan natin kilatisin talaga? Remember, maybe what you're asking more of is not necessarily on the need perspective, but on the compellingness to actually purchase that product, right?
Right.
What we say, and this is something I've shared with the Jessica and the team before, is that are you a vitamin or an aspirin?
Yes.
Right? What's a vitamin? A vitamin is something you take, right, on a daily basis, right? And if makalimutan mo, you forget to take it tonight, let's say. You say, bawi ako tomorrow, kalimutan ko eh. Right? But an
Yes.
aspirin is something that you have to take. You can't miss it. Why? Because the pain is so much that you need it to alleviate the pain. Right? So you have to look for that concept or that idea that is an aspirin right now. Take note of this though, that each customer segment may perceive things differently. Meaning, one segment may say, yung product mo, vitamin lang yan, parang cute, right? Nice to have yan sa akin. So I might look at it and say, okay, that's just there. And say, I might try it once, right? Pero tapos na yun. But for the same product, there's a group of people that consider that as an aspirin. Na parang sila yung day-to-day, nasa na ba yan? Kailangan ko yan. So who will you go after? The ones who say it's a nice to have? Or is it the group that says that the product is a must-have? Obviously, you'd go with the guys who say it's a must-have. Why? Because they're the ones who's willing to pay for it and buy it on a regular basis. Right? A simple example would be, for example, milk tea. Right?
I was thinking of the same thing.
Diba? Milk
Yeah.
tea, parang, sige, ako, to be upfront, I'm not really a milk tea drinker, but every once in a while, I'll take it. Right? But there are other people who, no, I need my milk tea every day. Right? Twice a day pa nga yung iba. So, sinong bebentahan mo talaga? Di harabulin mo yung gusto talaga yung produkto mo. And that's where a lot of startups are actually facing challenges. Why? Because masyado nang generalize yung customer base nila. Why? Because they're only looking at the need. But remember, all of the products that we buy, there's a need at the core of that. Lahat may need. Diba? Ang tanong lang yan, bakit yung sa iyo yung bibilin ko, hindi yung kabila? Kasi pareho naman yung need na ina-address eh. Right? So, doon lang sa want na nagkakatalo.
I was thinking of this in that line kanina na sa dami ng competition, di ba? So why would I still go for that kung nandun yung passion ko and I have vision for that and there's a need for that. I can see the need and want for that.
But remember also, if we go back to hierarchy of needs, people are always trying to give you what you need. So therefore, mas maraming competition dyan. So ang tanong na lang dyan is, how do you address the wants? Right? Doon nagkakatalo. Kasi bakit? For example, going back to to a simple example, di ba sa hierarchy of needs, sa pinakababa, you have food, for example.
Food. Yeah.
Right? Ang daming food options that address our need to nourish our bodies. Right? Pero, where does the competition lie? Does the competition lie in addressing the need? No. It's accomplishing the want. Di ba? Kasi obviously, lahat naman talaga na binibili natin may tinutugunan na pangangailangan right? There's a need that is being addressed. The only question is, how is that product able to address the want?
That's
right?
Very insightful. I hope na answer yung question mo, Cheska, and you were able to get insightful understanding about your question. Now, we also have another question from Nico Magalona. Can you cite at least one big challenges that you face in your startup journey, and how do you overcome on this situation?
Marami. Right? So, sobrang dami to, I mean, it never ends actually. But the nice thing about these challenges is that, it builds you as a person. I never thought that I'd have this high of an adversity quotient. Right? But yeah, apparently I did. Pero I think, as I mentioned earlier, one of the challenges I've had was I had partner issues with some companies that I started. So that's one. Some of them didn't turn out as nicely as I would have wanted.
Like, can you be more specific in example?
Mahirap pag-usapan But maybe one example that, ito mas simple na lang siguro. Product market fit is always a challenge, right? As I mentioned, finding the right group of customers is always a challenge. So initially you would look at, ito yung group na to. You spend. And then you realize, oops, hindi pala sila. So you need to change direction and find a different group of people now. So that's a challenge that I've encountered. There was one also in relation to that wherein I did all the validation. We started an app company way back in 2009. We did all the interviews. We talked to not just our friends, but even the actual users themselves. And we did the right process, right? But then again, some certain triggers in the environment didn't materialize. So we lost some money on that. So when we built the product, it came out to market. We tried to push it, but nobody wanted to use it. It was very early in the app scene, 2009, right? So that was 11 years ago already. So it was an expensive endeavor, but at the same time also, it's a learning experience. We built something, we thought that it would click because of certain expectations and trends, like, mobile usage and data usage, data improvement and so on, that didn't just materialize. So it was a nice concept. People have been, maybe it was just ahead of its time. Right. So we've had that kind of experience also.
That's right. So since you mentioned validating your ideas, and you've already you mentioned how you validate your companies. So do you have a certain qualification, like when you do the validation, like, okay, you do the validation and you have this certain qualification, okay, that this product is good to go for production development na?
It really depends kasi yung product development side depende talaga on what type of product it is also, right? But I think what's important is the response of the market. When you talk to the people and say, oh, what's the feedback? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And then they say yes. I think the ultimate test is really whether they do pay for the product, right? When they actually pay for the product and they come back and there's recurring purchase. I think that's the ultimate test.
And I would like to add one more question. So, for example, usually yung mga entrepreneurs, I think the curse for entrepreneurs we're always in love sa product natin, di ba? So, what if you've already done the validation and then during the process, you're seeing that the idea is not good after all. Sometimes it's hard for founders to let those go because we're so in
Yes.
love. What are your suggestions or tips about it?
Be ready to let go. I cannot say when, um, but you'll know. Mas lalo na kapag masakit na sa bulsa, you'll know.
Exactly. So learn how
Right?
to let go.
But normally you'll know really when it's time to either you pivot the direction, you've tried pivoting it, meaning you shift direction. But sometimes kahit anong shift mo in direction, talaga it doesn't work.
Let
If
go
it's
na.
really just burning your pocket, then those are some of the triggers that you would normally see.
Yeah, I think that answers the question kanina, no? From Roque Constiniano, sabi niya, at what stage shall I give up my idea and make some modifications on it, no? So,
Modification should happen on a regular basis kasi siyempre you're adapting the product, right?
Mhm.
Based on your validation, based on feedback that you get from your actual customers and so on, right? But what I'm trying to say is that sometimes kahit anong modification mo, hindi talaga eh.
Yeah,
Right?
it's
Kumbaga,
something like
parang it ends up being a nice to have, right? I always say this, di ba? I'm not saying though that kapag cute yung product, it's not gonna sell, right? Pero especially if you're talking about a startup and if you want this to be at the core of your business, if it's something new, especially and innovative, it cannot just be cute, right? It has to be something that really compels me to buy. Di ba? Kasi to be upfront naman, there naman magagandang produkto na lumalabas na cute.
yung mga nagva-viral
Yeah.
eh.
Yung naging
Yeah.
viral cute, di ba? Pero makita
Ngayon
mo
lang.
kasi ako, personally, the challenge with being cute is that it might become a fad.
Yes.
And if it becomes a fad, then the is short term,
Yes, exactly.
right? And for us entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting out, and I go back kasi to the origins of an entrepreneur, di ba? We're not regular business people, right? We're not regular business men or women, right? As entrepreneurs, we want to change the rules of the game. We always are looking for a better way, right? Hindi ako yung gaya-gaya, di ba? So ayoko yung nakikiuso. If makikiuso man ako, makikiuso ako from the perspective that, yes, I will produce this kind of product, but it should be better, way better than whatever's out there. Right?
Right. So,
Hindi lang
no? Kailangan nag-innovate ka. You are what you call evolving every time.
yeah. So so that's the mindset that I have.
So, Carlo, what you're sharing, kasi it's now a question of kung kailan ko i-let go. So, resilience versus yung being wise of what's happening with my product right now. And a lot of companies, a lot of businesses have failed because of ayaw nilang i-let go. Hindi, kaya pa yan, hanggang sa nabaon na sa utang hanggang nag-bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Diba, may history yung mga big companies na hindi, ayaw nilang magpabilid sa mga bigger companies, and then until such time, they announced bankruptcy. Now, why do now let's talk about small businesses. Why do they fail? Why do you think these businesses fail?
Well, it varies eh. Changing customer behavior. There's really, some of them naubusan ng talaga ng pera. Meaning talagang hindi nila matuhog yung right target market, or they didn't really have the competence to really grow it, which happens also. But there are also times when there's yung binanggit ko kanina, yung nakikiuso lang na nagiging gaya-gaya. Right?
Yeah.
And this applies not just to startups, but primarily for especially traditional businesses, right? Like for example, I remember when, hindi ko naalala kung naalala niyo dati yung mga pearl shake yung nauso.
Yes, yung Zagu.
Mga Zagu, right? So what happened? When Zagu was doing very well, right? People started copying them left and right.
That's
Correct?
right.
Yeah.
And then what happened? Nung nagka-taper down yung interest, sino yung naiwan? The original was the one who got left behind. Why? Because they've always been innovating in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? The other fad Hindi man fad, but the other yung nakipansin ko is siomai, for example. Diba, nung nauso yung siomai, everybody started opening a siomai stand.
Yeah.
Di ba? Then all of a sudden, unti-unti, isa-isa na naman bumabawas. Bakit? Dahil kasi they weren't really innovating, right? But sino yung napansin yung nagsusurvive? Are the ones, pwede naman kasi maging second mover ka, okay lang naman yun eh. Pero dapat may innovation mindset ka pa din, di ba na, I will improve my product. So, but there are others also that are innovative in the first place. Like, these are the guys who survive. Like Potato Corner, for example, who's constantly been innovating on their or the Taters, right? Or even the Jollibees, right? Even the Jollibees are innovating constantly. So that's something that you have to think about, right?
Right.
So I think I would like to just add sa innovation. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like the innovation is like not completely reinvent the wheel. It's just you come up with something. It can be something na meron na existing na, and then you make it better. That can be also innovation, di ba?
Yes. Basta yung ang lang naman dyan is what type of innovation do you apply?
That's right.
Is it yung mga like what I said, kasi minsan yung innovation pa-cute-cute lang eh.
Yes.
Dapat yung significant yung improvement. Kasi to be upfront, marami naman talagang produkto ngayon na what we call this, talagang the products that we use right now, talagang hockey stick naman talaga, yung tremendous naman talaga yung innovation na nangyari. Mm-hmm. It's similar to the original one, pero iba nga na ngayon eh. Like for example, even if you think about the Netflixes, di ba?
That's right.
They're not the first streaming company, but what did they do better? Eh sa nila, wala nang buffering. Dire-diretso yung mga tipong ganun ba?
Yes.
Exponential innovation na nangyari. So, I think that's, ultimately we are solving the same problem, right? But we're just coming up with exponentially better solutions.
Right. So since you mentioned, Carlo, again, innovation, I think right now is the key to keep your business afloat. Any thoughts about those startups who are trying to fail fast?
Actually,
before you answer that, Carlo,
okay.
I would like to add, what is your message na rin, since you're going to be answering sa mga which is related ngayon, a lot of people, a lot of businesses are closing down, and then I can personally relate to it. Like, yung sa letting go ng business. Ngayon, like, may mga businesses na 50% lang makapag-operate, minsan hindi pa talaga kaya. So, what's your message and, message about it? Sa mga kailangan mag-let go at kailangan pang, tatagan yung resilience nila.
So, ako, my mindset lang with that is, in Startup Village, we came up with a program, watch out for it, that's called Jumpstart Restart. The objective of that program is like 5 days, I think, the way we designed it. And that objective of that is parang a company review, right? Na parang we want to guide the entrepreneur towards seeing whether this business can still be revived or jump-started, or maybe it's time for you to close it and move on to the next one, which is restart a new one, right? Kasi when you do that objectively, you're gonna see whether or not hindi na talaga kaya ma-revive itong negosyong ito. Pero may times na parang, ito pa, may last strategy pa tayo na pwedeng gamitin. Kung hindi talaga to, then we decide to restart, to reboot or close it down and start a new one, right? But sometimes you just need the guidance, right, in order for you to do that.
That's very great.
So we created one. So if you want more information, just send me a private message or go to the Startup Village Facebook page, ping us and say you're interested. So we designed the program for that already. So we'll do a parang company review, then there's mentorship and so on. But at the same time, we'll also help you, kumbaga parang part of that process is, sige, We're having a tough time now. If your business has been around for a while, tendency is also, it's difficult for you to pivot. Kasi naging satisfied ka na eh. So we'll come up with, what part of the program is, sige, let's look at the new opportunities that you can find because of what's going on. Right. Now, if you find something, then great. If not, then maybe it's time to really move on. Now, to jump into Christoph's question about failing fast. That's actually something that we promote. And that's normally what is promoted in all startup communities globally. To fail fast, but you fail forward. Why? Because kasi ang challenge here in the Philippines is that you're stigmatized if you fail. Right? May stigma na parang, ay, palpak yan, and so on. Nag-fail eh. But in other markets, in the US, Silicon Valley, and so on, they welcome the failure for as long as you control that failure. In what sense? Kasi at the end of the day, when you fail, you learn from that experience. Right? Now, the more painful the experience, sometimes, di ba, kapag masugatan ka, alam mo na hindi mo na uulitin. So it's wisdom na. Right? But for startups, kasi since the journey is difficult, that's why you want to fail fast. You fail in product development fast. You fail fast in matching and validating. Because the faster you fail, the faster you can regroup and change direction. Right? Because you've already learned. Kasi kung papatagalin mo lang, di yung burn mo mas matagal.
Right.
It's lower yung evolution mo. So the faster you fail, the faster you learn, the faster you can actually take off. So that's actually the mentality in the startup side.
So far, that's for me. For me, that's the best thing I've heard so far when it comes to failure. Na huwag ka matakot, lalo na sa business. No, a lot of people are afraid to fail. No.
Yeah.
And you have already mentioned something. Yung role ni Startup Village, Carlo, and I think this would go for the question that with Carlo Calimon and the Startup Village are trying to play in the growing startup scene in the Philippines. So you already started it. Can you give us a few more things that what you could do right now, Startup Village, what you could do to the startup of the future of the Philippines?
So Jumpstart program, Carlo, are you welcoming every sizes or every industry businesses?
Yeah. Because like what I said naman before, unless obviously there's a big group of people that focus on a particular industry, fundamentals naman in these things are more or less the same. Right? So it's just a matter of calibration. Right? In fact, sometimes it's also good to be matched or to be included with other industries because you learn from them as well. So it's open to whatever stage. Obviously, primary focus would be startups and micro small enterprises because they're the ones who really need the help. So
good to know that may ganitong program, especially now. Definitely, a lot of companies would benefit from your program now. So I guess we can move to the sweetest question, the sweetest part of the program, like raising funds. Would you like to ask the first questions, Christoph?
Sure. Okay. So what are the key components? No, ito na lang. So when it comes to indicating factors that tell the founder that she needs to raise funds, what do you think are the key components of a fundable company?
Okay. So first is you have to understand why you're raising funds. Right? Do you actually need to? Are you earning enough revenue to keep the boat afloat and sustain you longer term, right? And then also at the same time, incur enough profits to help you grow the business. So that's the first question that you have to answer. Now, if the answer is no, you don't have enough resources, then maybe that's the time when you look at funding opportunities. Remember, when you look for an investor, right, and when you're looking for funds, you're giving up something that's yours.
Exactly.
Diba? You get diluted. So you're essentially sharing the value. That's okay, right? Especially if you don't have enough resources, that's fine. But remember, ang mentality kasi that's out there sometimes that you're already successful the moment you raise money. Right? In fact, hindi totoo yun. Because in fact, the moment you raise equity, right, or you sell equity to an investor, you have a bigger responsibility now. And what is that? But you now become stewards of that money,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? Because they're investors, what they're after is return on investment. So the idea is, may ibabalik mo ba yung pera? Now, what what are the key things that investors will take a look at, right? There are a few things, no? Obviously, it's the same thing that I mentioned earlier. It's about the founders, their passion, their vision, the cohesiveness of the team, the capability of the team. But they will also look at the idea, right? The innovation. Can it be scaled? Is there a potential based on the executions initially given? Is there potential for growth, right? Because sila, remember, I'm investing money, so I want to test, right, and help you, right, grow that business. So I'm putting my money because you need the money to grow your business. So therefore, I'm expecting something in return, right? So those are the basic things that investors will take a look at. And ultimately, it's about ROI.
So how much money should the startup raise, and what are the basic concept of startup valuation, especially in the Philippines, specifically?
The amount you raise is different depending on the organization or the company that you have. Normally, you start off with what you need as an organization, because people normally try to value yourself out of the investment, meaning ang laki ng valuation. You have to be realistic. Everything is based on projections and numbers, but also, as we say, especially in the early stages of a startup valuation is more of an art than a science, but it's still a balance between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's still a lot of promise and there are a lot of intangibles that have to be considered, right? Kapag medyo mature na yung company and you're after Series A, for example, which is a later stage round, normally na-establish mo na yung business model. But before that, that's when you're still developing, you're still trying to figure things out, and so on. So there's a lot of uncertainty.
Right. And regarding that, so since we're talking about investment, how do I find the right investors?
Well, I have that mindset that you pitch and pitch, join these competitions. Why? Because at the end of the day, you'll find the right match. But the ones who are successful normally, they're never after just the money. They're always looking at the strategic value that both sides can provide.
I see.
So it's not just about the money.
So
Kasi minsan sumasabog yan kapag hindi in agreement eh.
Okay.
what the people behind it and the strategy, the business model.
Yeah,
So-
and you want to also see if you have the right culture and the right values also with the investor.
Exactly. Now, Carlo, so for example, I've already raised my funds, and then I'm already profitable or hitting the target. How much should a founder pay himself or herself? Like how much, magkano ang sweldong kukunin ko na reasonable sa company?
Okay, so this is a tricky one. Depending actually if you have revenue. I'm that on that side wherein you always have to compute for your cost, right? Salary included. Now the only question is whether you draw a salary or not. Okay, meaning you actually get that salary, especially in the beginning, right? So that's part kaya nagiging sweat equity and so on. But sometimes also, right, once you're actually in there, startup founders work on a discount.
Is discount?
Diba? Kasi kung pera yung organization eh. So paano ka But you have to be able to sustain yourself pa rin. So, but good practice is always, especially with your financials, you assume the salary that you would pay if you hired an actual person.
Right.
Kasi yun yung market value eh. It's another thing though whether or not you're running it or somebody else is running it. Diba?
One last question from me, Carlo. No, since we're talking about yung investors, should the founders ask the investors to or others other members to sign NDAs before sharing the ideas with them about the company, and how can I protect as a founder my intellectual property?
NDAs are very common naman when you do pitching and so on.
Mhm.
But remember, ideas are a dime a dozen. Sa dinami-dami ng tao sa mundong ito, there's no such thing as a unique idea. But normally also when you're pitching, you're not sharing your secret sauce anyway. So you don't need to divulge that. Hindi mo naman kailangan ikwento na parang, this is how I do it. Ito yung algorithm. Ito yung ano. You're not gonna do that. But more than that, it's really, there still has to be trust also.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Hindi po pwede na parang you keep it too close to your heart that nobody can really understand what you're saying. Kasi even sa akin nangyari na yun, even mentoring pa lang ilang beses na ako Carlo, I need your advice. What do you call this? But before we start, naglabas ng tape recorder and sinabing, okay, if Carlo copies my idea, I can sue him. Yung mga ganun, okay, wow. Ikaw na yung humihingi ng tulong and then didemanda mo pa ako, di ba? Wow. Pero remember also the principle na, what they call this, when you talk about your idea, it means na napag-aralan mo na yan, di ba? Naisip mo na yan. Now imagine if, for example, I tell you my idea and you're able to execute faster than me. Hindi mo nag-aaya mo ko pero uli kitang kinausap was 3 months ago. Ang laki na nalamang mo sa akin pero hindi mo pa rin ginawa.
Exactly. It's about execution.
Unless obviously if the idea was already what they call this patented, di ba usapan naman yun? Kasi obviously, di ba, may preparation na yun, may intellectual property protection na yun, so legally they're protected. But if somebody else is able to execute ahead of you and you just talk to that person, then maybe you have the problem. You are the problem because it's all talk, no action.
Yeah.
Right? And like what I said, ideas are a dime a dozen.
Ouch.
Naniniwala ako dyan, Carlo. Like, for me, wala na ganong bagong idea ngayon. It's about how you innovate things and it's about how you execute things. Diba?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Very insightful yung mga tips and mentorship mo today. And I think we can go on for a few more hours, but we have to wrap up. We only have 2 more questions. And hopefully, yung mga nanonood, like, madami silang natutunan. And definitely, if you need help, mentorship, guidance, please do reach out to Carlo on Startup Village. So we, like Carlo mentioned, they have a Jumpstart program, and I think a lot of people would need this. A lot of businesses would need this. So Carlo, how can you see the future startups in the Philippines right now?
Well, in comparison to other ecosystems, we're still very young, very small, but we've been improving. People are starting to take a look at us, but obviously the pandemic that didn't help some startups because, di ba, compellingness lang and what do you call this and relevance at this point. But there are a lot of new ones that are popping up as well, because a lot of people were also laid off and so on. So therefore, a lot of people are being forced into the path, right? Which is why we're opening our 11th batch already of our startup program to be able to guide the next generation. The next 11th batch na yun. So what do you call this? Which is why we see already that the next generation would need help. Right? Kasi ang daming take the plunge without really having the fundamentals. And that's what we want to teach them. How to get started properly so that you're better prepared, right? To face the challenges that you're going to encounter. Yeah.
Okay. And last, Carlo, what role that do you do and now to promote Startup Village are trying to play in growing the startup scene now here in the Philippines? Ano ba yung ginagawa ninyo?
Kami, I've been doing this for the past 15 years without even being a startup scene at that time. It was all about promoting entrepreneurship. One of the things that we did was you're even actually the ones who integrated entrepreneurship into the national high school curriculum. So the frameworks being used by TEPED, we integrated that in 2006, and it's still being used up to now. So yung entrep curriculum ng DepEd, hindi naman sa ano, pero ako na yung gumawa nun. Right? 11 years ago. So with that in mind, we've always been an avid supporter of helping the ecosystem, whether it's the Philippine Startup Act or the Philippine Innovation Act, or up to now, I still work with DTI, DOST, and so on. Right? So we're recognized, kasi iba kami, we're private incubator, right? We're privately run and privately formed, which is good also because we're neutral, right? But at the same time, there's a lot of work that we can do to help the ecosystem. But primarily, it's about helping the next generation. So if you're an aspiring startup, that's our main focus. Kasi ang sabi namin, people keep on talking about the unicorn or the Series A investment and so on, a Series A investable startup. Sabi ko, simple lang. Paano sila aabot dun sa later stage na yun kung hindi mo sila tutulungan dito? So they need the support here in order for them to grow. No, mas malaki ang risk dito, mas maraming sumasali dito, but a lot of people fail. Okay lang. Pero those that survive are the ones who really go up. But we need to support them here. Right? Each stage may different degree of support. So we're happy to be here because if we don't help them here, how are they going to progress to the next level, so on.
Right.
We're great that ESME is part of Startup Village. So like I mentioned earlier, it's been a great help, mentorship from Carlo. So any last word or final words to our audience or the Filipino people? Invite them to an event.
To me, maybe the final message is take the plunge. Don't be afraid. If you have that great idea, explore it at the very least. Right? Explore it at the very least. Why? Because you don't know if this idea can be what changes the world. Ultimately, their mindset should be, how do I improve things? How do I make things better? It's not about the money, right? Kasi iba kaya nag-fail to be upfront is the fact that they think about the money, right? They think about the money and, di ba, mali yung vision eh. Mali yung vision eh, right? So in this case, have the right mindset yourself, right? Think about how to really solve problems and help other people, then create value. Take the plunge, use your skills, look for mentors, right? And if you need help, Startup Village is always there. Just look for us. We're on Facebook. You also have our website, though it's due for an update, www.startupvillage.ph. But easier for us if you could chat with us or connect with us on Facebook.
Great.
Right.
Thank you so much again for your time.
Grabe.
Very
Thank you very much, Carlo.
motivating. So yeah,
Yes.
I guess we have to wrap up now. And Christoph, would you like to say
Thank you.
something?
First of all, thank you very much, Carlo. We learned a lot from you for this 1 hour. Sobrang kulang, pero we know hopefully we could have you again in the future here at ESME. And to our viewers, this may come to a surprise. So for everyone who attended this webinar, you can get your digital certificate of attendance. Just visit www.esme or esme.ph, and we will also post the link on this on the comment section of this live webinar. So yes, please feel free to visit that website.
So yeah, there you go. It's a wrap. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. It's a very informative webinar series. So please don't forget to like our Facebook page, and please do visit our website at www.esme.ph. There you can check our free courses, and we will be launching our master classes soon. So again,
Yes.
thank you, Christoph, and thank you, Carlo. You both have a great day, evening na pala, and enjoy your weekend. Be safe and healthy always.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you, Carlo. And for the other viewers, please stick around because after this, we have another webinar here at ESME. So, I think that the video will be played after our show. So thank you, guys. Thank you, Ms. Jeka, for having me, and Sir Carlo. Thank you. That was really
Thank you.
insightful.